Alright, let's get into it.
We gotta talk about the 17 earthquakes that just hit near Area 51 the other day, and a Harvard scientist is saying they might not be natural. Between April 29th and 30th, an unusually shallow swarm of earthquakes and tremors struck in Nevada, near Area 51 and the surrounding region. The initial one registered at a 4.4 on the Richter scale, followed up by over a dozen aftershocks. But some are saying the data looks suspicious, because a lot of them happened much closer to the surface, like only 2.5 miles deep, which is unusual. This isn't something that typically happens in Nevada in the first place, but according to seismic records, these usually happen at 6 to 12 miles deep. This swarm was practically at the surface, hitting over a 24-hour period. Now, this has fueled speculation online that something else is going on here, like maybe some kind of underground testing or a massive explosion happened, since this is in a region that doesn't get a lot of tectonic activity, and it happened near the most secretive military installation on Earth. I'm not saying that's what happened, but if something like a detonation did occur, it's not exactly new to the region. Just look west of Area 51 and you'll find the Nevada test site, which is full of massive craters from decades of testing that kind of stuff. Scientists admit there can be ambiguity in seismic readings because underground explosions and earthquakes produce nearly identical signatures, but they're saying this was probably just a natural occurrence. That maybe some of these missing scientists were actually not unalived and were instead recruited for some bizarre project out in the desert that required the brightest minds to work on. Maybe it has something to do with future technologies, aliens, or something else I can't even think of.
I don't know, it seems awfully suspicious for it to just be a natural event. Might be naturally caused by the military. Just keep your eyes open for any new Mandela effects, because for all we know, this is probably what created it. Let me know what you guys think.
This is not what you think it is. I was just warning yesterday about the rising water temperature and, the El Nino or whatever that's coming, the worst in 150 years. There's absolutely a Red Sea, but why is it a Red Sea? These are all dead shrimp. Completely irrelevant. You remember when Gina posted this a couple days ago? And it was just like all these random beams just heading into the ocean and also, into these certain countries. Completely unrelated from frequency. It's definitely getting wild. Yellowstone, volcanoes, earthquake, 17 outside of Area 51 alone. And now, randomly, unrelated, we have millions and millions of shrimp just passing away in the water, turning the water blood red, by the way. And people think that everything is normal. Totally. And of course, we now have what they claim is going to be another solar flare. Of course, they're not lying at all. And of course, the Schumann frequency is not bilaterally picking up other frequencies. And of course, it's totally not. It's unrelated from our, us and our health and our sleep rhythms and everything else.
Let me know what you guys think about these rising water temperatures. Do you think that this has something to do with governmental experiments, possibly global warming? What's your take on all this? Please feel free to share in the comments.
What if the closing of Spirit Airlines is being overhyped to make more money for the bigger airlines? Now, before you all get upset with me, please hear me out because I'm going somewhere with this. Spirit Airlines just shut down, ceased operations, and people who have reservations or plans to go on that airline, they're out. They're done. It isn't going to happen. Now, Spirit Airlines says they're going to give refunds to people who already paid for flights, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm saying is maybe the bigger airlines are going to use Spirit closing down to their advantage. Please hear me out. So those bigger airlines, like American, United, the other ones, are already offering to help out stranded Spirit customers. But there's kind of a growing narrative with this, that if Spirit could shut down, which was kind of a smaller airline, but still very popular because it was cheap, maybe the general public shouldn't trust those smaller airlines in case something happens to them like it happened to Spirit. So instead, make your reservations, make your travel plans through the bigger airlines. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying that's the narrative that's currently being put out. So is it possible that those major airlines are using Spirit's demise to get more people to fly with them, even if they charge more money? Basically, taking advantage of the situation. Like I said, this is hypothetical. I'm just asking the question. I'm just wondering if this could possibly be going on.
There is absolutely no doubt that these major airlines are taking advantage of this, and more than likely their prices are going to increase after a month or two of Spirit being fully shut down. I'm sure that there was a big deal behind the scenes between Spirit and other airlines to sell their jet engines, but truth be told, Spirit was a really sketchy air flight service. I never enjoyed them at all, but very affordable. Now I'm just really concerned about the price increase that these other airlines are going to do, because they're going to. At least that's what I think. Let me know your opinions. Hey, if you haven't done so already, and if you're enjoying the show, give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I upload a video like this 2 times a day, Monday through Saturday, early in the morning and later in the afternoon. And for everyone that's made it this far, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And just a heads up, I know I said I upload 2 times a day, but today there will be 3 uploads, so look forward to my last upload at 12 o'clock in the morning.
Never give child beggars in India money. People have just found out the heartbreaking reason why. You need to see this. Now this happens all over the world, but especially in Mumbai, India, child beggars are a very prominent thing. You'll see these poor people, these poor children walking the streets, sitting on the floor begging for money. But there's something a lot more disturbing going on. A lot of the time these people, these children that you would see wouldn't be in the best shape. A lot of them are often disabled or even just very badly hurt. And although there is some of these people that genuinely are disabled or injured and they're out there begging for money, there is also a large side of this controlled by gangs where the person isn't actually disabled. They are physically doing these things to these people to make them into this form so that people feel sorry for them and they give them more money. And the gangs will take 99% of that money. Every single day in India and across the world, children are taken. And in India, a lot of the time it is by these gangs who take these poor people and do these horrendous things to them. Because the more injured one of these people is, the more money they're going to earn. Some of these people are even given worse fates that I can't even go into, as you can imagine. But this is a well-known thing. It happens here and it happens all around the world, and it's something to be aware of. And more people are talking about this recently, especially with all of the travelers side of TikTok, with people traveling all around Asia and everywhere. And a lot of the time, the people that they are seeing, or you are seeing on the streets, you feel sorry for them, rightfully so, but the money that you're giving them thinking they're going to have a better life is actually going to gangs.
It is extraordinarily disgusting that the world is aware of things like this happening, and they're still allowed to happen. It's really sad. I'm not certain what we could do about it, but I really wish that there was something that we could do.
The jester is the smartest man in the room. On the surface, appearing as a foolish clown, a slave to the king, the butt of every joke, getting mocked and not taken seriously. But the jester was the only one allowed to tell the truth. In formal public settings like the royal court, the jester had free reign to say whatever he wants for the purpose of entertainment. That's his job. Meaning, he can talk about anything that was on his mind, things that everyone else was too afraid of voicing. He could mock the king, expose corruption and conspiracies that were very real under the guise of telling a joke. The mask of being the fool gave him the ultimate freedom to speak the truth. Peasants would get thrown to jail. The king would never dare expose corruption to his own subjects, and other high-ranking noblemen, well, they had jobs they wanted to keep. During the Middle Ages, the jester's role was to provide entertainment and lighten the load of the severity of situations, even if it meant revealing the truth behind it. People lower their guard around lightheartedness they don't deem a threat, and become more open with sharing personal insights around them as well. The jester not only could say the most ridiculous and incriminating statements and oftentimes expose the most disturbing truths, but they also had the deepest insider intel from the king and his closest circles due to his harmless external nature. It didn't matter if the jester knew that tax collectors were stealing money from the poor, he's just a jester, no one would believe him. Of course, they didn't have complete immunity. The king could execute them if they ever went too far, but if they played their cards just right, this combination of insider intel and ability to speak freely could influence the course of politics, power, and society as a whole. One such jester made a joke during a drought that taxes were so high even the rain wouldn't come, which the king liked so much he lowered the taxes, and coincidentally it rained shortly after. Or the world famous jester Stanchik in 16th century Poland, known for his sharp wit and deep political insight. He used this privilege of the fool to critique the decisions of the monarchy and gain deep trust with the nobility, serving under the reign of 3 different kings, attaining the unique position as something more of a philosopher critic during the Polish Renaissance, knowing the truth of the world around him, while the king and his cohorts dance and celebrate in the royal ball behind him. But the world actually rewards jesters for taking risks, doing and saying things that everyone else is too afraid to speak up about in exchange for recognition and influence, risking looking stupid and getting mocked by the brainwashed masses for speaking the truth, no matter how ridiculous or harsh it may be. So pretending to be the fool can also be the smartest smartest move on the chessboard to make. Hey, for entertainment purposes only, remember?
Sometimes I feel like the political scene is nothing but a bunch of jesters revealing secrets and hidden truths of the world. Maybe it's still going on, but if these people that are in political positions are nothing but jesters, who is the actual individual that they're entertaining?
Here's more things I want to know. I want to know what intuition is. Intuition is essentially the ability to understand or know something immediately without conscious reasoning or deliberate analysis. It's the sense of just knowing without fully being able to explain why. We've all experienced intuition. It's that feeling in your gut like something's wrong, or do this thing, or don't do that. And if we ignore it, sometimes bad things can happen. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman called this System 1 thinking, meaning fast and instinctive, not System 2 thinking, which is slow and analytical. Experientially, it shows up as a gut feeling, or that sudden sense of clarity, that aha moment, or knowing the answer to a problem before you can even explain the reasoning or understanding for it. I've learned to trust my intuition more than once in life, and I've also ignored it. The last time I ignored it was 11 years ago. I was mountain biking, and I went to hit a jump, and internally I said, don't do it. And my ego said, do it. I ended up tearing my ACL and having to have full ACL reconstructive surgery, which took a year and a half out of my life and set me back a bit. It was a humbling lesson, and the lesson was, don't ignore your intuition. Flash forward, I was painting a mural in Poway, California. It was a beautiful mural for a school. I had one can of this certain color left in spray paint. The can was clogged, and I thought it was a good idea to stick a nail in it to unclog it. I stuck the nail in, pulled it out, nothing happened. I stuck it in again, turned it upside down, dropped it down, pushed it in farther. I lifted it up, and before I pulled the nail out, I thought I should put on my sunglasses just in case this sprays. I put on my sunglasses, I pulled the nail out, and it exploded in my face. And I looked like this. I wasn't even mad. I was so grateful that I listened to my intuition, because if I hadn't put these glasses on, I would 100% be blind or mostly blind today. So when your intuition says do it or don't do it, you should listen. What I really want to know is just how that works. That spidey sense in the back of your head. I don't know, but I want to know. But what I really want to know, who on that list is going to jail first in America?
Intuition is an amazing gift to have, because almost 9 times out of 10, if you listen to your gut, it's going to lead you in the right direction. Unless you're hungry and possibly under the influence, then it could lead you in the wrong direction. I also think that it falls in the line of common sense sometimes, with really good critical thinking skills.
Colorado man is trapped in a Kafkaesque nightmare, as every time he leaves the house he risks getting arrested for a crime he did not commit. This is the big problem with surveillance that is monitored by AI, and it's about to get a lot worse. Because now, we can use Wi-Fi to identify individuals using biometric data, and the technology is not perfect, and once you are in the system, you can't get out. This is because of the nature of how these systems work. For a long time, yes, there have been cameras everywhere, but they do not communicate with each other, and they are operated by disconnected systems. Companies like Flock are trying to change that by installing cameras everywhere, and maybe they can eliminate crime, no, probably not. Because AI systems can identify individuals pretty well anyway. In the case of our friend from Colorado, his license plate was very similar to someone who did have a warrant out for their arrest, and unfortunately, he ended up in the system and now he cannot get out. Once you are in the system, it may be impossible to fully remove you from it, and unfortunately, because of the use of AI, which is prone to hallucinations, 30 to 60% at some point, people are being added to the system when they absolutely do not belong there. This is part of a much more troubling trend that is surveillance, and I've never really paid that much attention to it, but it might be time to start paying attention to it. Especially with the application of new technology like identifying people by biometric data. Now, this has been done for at least a decade. The technology has existed, but it has not been widely applied, and the advent of AI makes them much more effective. Radio signals are constantly moving around us, and we interrupt them. They can also be used to measure us, our breathing patterns, our heart rate, and our identities. Even something like your gait can identify an individual, and these are being identified by AI systems. Think about millions of people passing by cameras, and every once in a while it gets a little ping. It might be a hallucination, it may actually be looking for you, and then it can inform local law enforcement to come find you. Given enough of those pings, if say you look like a suspicious individual, the system can learn that you are in fact suspicious, and then you can end up in a problem like our friend from Colorado. And of course, these systems have also been misused by certain people that have access to these systems. So yes, it is a very scary prospect. Should you personally be concerned about it? And I don't say this a lot, but yes, you should be concerned.
You should be very concerned, because 10 years from now, maybe 15, maybe even 5, there's going to be RoboCop-esque robots out there that's going to get this alert that you're some kind of criminal and you're just a dude sitting in your house drinking some nice cold lemonade, and the next thing you know, RoboCop's busting down your door, tasing you, and dragging you out of your house in your underwear and throwing you in jail for stealing a car and vandalizing property. Even though it wasn't you, it was just someone that look like you. And also, I think if all of these companies are collecting our information, collecting our identities, using our biometrics, there needs to be identity checks. And when I say checks, I mean cashable checks, something that you can take to the bank and get paid for. These companies that are using your identity or selling your information, we should be a part of that pie. If our information and our identity is getting sold and utilized somewhere else, we should be getting paid for that. We should get a check from each and every company that does so. That's what I think anyways. Let me know your opinion.
Dude, 2026 sucks, because what do you mean aliens are probably just the descendants of the billionaire bunker babies who survived nuclear holocaust? What? There's this lady, Amy Escort, she's one of the scientists who have gone missing or mysteriously died in the last couple years that everyone's talking about. And she talks a lot about aliens, because government stuff. Basically what she says is aliens are not extraterrestrials, they're ultra-terrestrials. This sucks. This sucks. If you want to have any hope in your day, just stop watching this, because this sucks. Basically, the theory is that there will be nuclear war that ends us all, and there will be a small group of survivors of people who went underground. And the aliens are us 52,000 or 47,000 years in the future, and they've time traveled back to see what the we did wrong, right? Okay. The people who survived the nuclear holocaust are the people who went underground. Who are the only people who can afford to go underground? I don't know, probably the billionaires that have been building bunkers for the last 20 years. So all of the aliens are not only not cool outer space guys, they're the descendants of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk after a lot of radiation exposure. What do you mean, dude? What do you mean? I mean, it makes a lot of sense because aliens do kind of look a lot like Elon Musk, and so it makes sense that they're his radiation baby descendants. It does make sense. It does make sense. You know, we're always talking about how Zuckerberg looks like an alien. You know, maybe it's the aliens look like Zuckerberg because they're his kids. You know, they're his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren plus some nuclear radiation. I mean, it makes sense, but lame. The writers of Humanity jumped the shark years ago. We can all agree with that. But this is a worse ending than Lost and The Sopranos, because what do you mean the most interesting plot line, the alien plot line that's been, the cliffhanger, the suspense that's been keeping the show alive for decades, you're just gonna let it flop like that? You're just gonna be actually it's just, those billionaire guys they hate that all are little and ran underground instead of, I don't know, trying to save the planet. Yeah, it's just their radiation babies. That's all aliens are, and they're actually coming to save no one. That's so lame. That's so lame. That's why they keep saying they're going to tell us about aliens and then not, because we'd all be so mad if we found out aliens are just us after a nuclear holocaust. But not even us. They're Zuckerberg babies and Elon Musk babies and Bezos babies. That sucks.
That is a very interesting way of looking at it. I have heard the aliens are us from the future before, but putting it together that it could possibly be descendants from Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or Bezos, yeah, that does actually suck.
I've been watching videos about the red button, blue button, and I've been very surprised to see so many people say that they would hit the red button, because hitting the red button is the only way to guarantee that somebody dies. Yeah, it protects you, right? It costs you nothing. It really doesn't. So I'm gonna hit the red button. I'm gonna make sure I'm good no matter what. Those suckers who looked out for humanity, who hit the blue button, screw them, right? As long as I'm protected. There's something fundamentally that we've all been groomed to ignore, and that's the effect that our individual choice has on the collective field. And it matters because you live in the collective field. You don't live in an individual field that doesn't touch others. You live in the collective field, and yet you've been groomed to prioritize your individuality at the expense of the collective. And so those people who know my work know I'm not for high control, very focus on the collective to the expense of the individual societies or cultures. And I'm not for cultures or societies that prioritize the individual over the collective. We need to understand that both are equally important and they need to live in coherent balance and harmony. What is good for the collective is normally good for the individual. What is good for the individual is normally good for the collective. When we're living in a generative society and not one that's extractive by nature and based on consumption. You know, I've been doing a lot of like big channeling and reframing, and you know, one of the things that I think have really kind of lost touch with is what real growth is. There is generative growth. Okay, I'm going to feed something and it's going to grow, and something's going to support its growth, and it's growth for the sake of growth. It supports future growth. And then there's extraction that's mass growth. I'm going to take your money from your pocket. I'm going to put it in my pocket. I'm going to call that growth. That's not growth. That's consumption. There's a difference. That's not growth. That's me feeding. There's a difference, right? And so in the same way, they've kind of programmed us to think this way, right? I got to look out for myself. I got to make sure I hit that red button. But the only way to ensure that nobody dies is if we all, or at least the majority of us, hit the blue button. That seems like a very obvious choice. No one dies if 51% of us hit the blue button. Now, no one dies if 100% of us hit the red button, right? No one dies. Do you really think 100% of us are going to hit the red button? No, you know they're not. So you know somebody's going to die because of your choice, and you make it anyways because you protect yourself. And that's how we've all been groomed, right? Doesn't matter that this corporation pollutes, right? They in their mind, they don't have to deal with it, except they have to live in the pollution too. They have to live in it too. If you create chaos, you also have to live in the chaos that you create. If you fracture the field, you also have to live in the field that is now fractured. It fundamentally makes it harder for you to live the life that you want because of your choices in the collective field. So yeah, there might be a short-term benefit to you, but there's a long-term cost. And that cost is something that we never talk about. That cost is what we pretend isn't there. And it's a heavy price. It's heavier than people seem to realize. So, you know, I think it's obvious I would hit the blue button. I would hit the blue button. I would take my bet. I would gamble on humanity. I would gamble on the inherent goodness in us. This being flooded in the field right now, it feels kind of intentional too as a signal, right? To kind of highlight how much your brother and sister aren't looking out for you. They don't give a f about you. They would hit the red button in a heartbeat. I refuse to believe that. As many people and comments as I'm seeing online, I refuse to believe that. I'm going to keep my faith in the goodness of humanity. And for those people who think I'm crazy, if we really were that just prone to just hate and nastiness, it wouldn't have to be programmed to us. They wouldn't have to create whole shows to mirror that back to us. They're programming us to it because it's not our innate nature, you guys. We look out for each other. We take care of each other in our worst moments. When we are compressed all the way, we show up for each other in a real way. And then they don't want us seeing that. So they flood the field with pictures of discord and anger, discourse and anger, right? So that we'll think that that's what it is, so that we'll be suspicious of each other, so that we'll never build coalitions. And they love the idea that we would look out for ourselves instead of looking out for each other because it's their MO. It was never ours, you guys. Press the blue button.
I have seen would you press the red button or the blue button now for the past few days. And personally, I am very surprised on how many people would actually press the red button. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of people that say that they would press the blue button to be a part of the 50% that could possibly press it and everyone's still alive. But what really gets me is there's no one really talking about not participating in it at all. Let's just not press the button and entertain the people that want to see this entertainment. How about that? Why do those choices have to be the only options? Why press either one of them? How about we just step back and not entertain the people that are on top? Because that's ultimately what this scenario is. You could say that you're a good guy and you want to be with the 50% that possibly presses the blue button, or you could be the selfish guy that says, I'm going to press this red button and guarantee my life only. But on the top of everything, there's people looking down laughing that there's people deciding as to which button they want to press, when in reality, you don't have to press either one. fun. And I think that that's the true test, is you do not always have to participate in everything that everyone else is participating in or is claimed to have to participate in. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one.
When someone dies, the tradition is to stop every clock in the house. That's been done for centuries in cultures all over the world, and nobody really asks why anymore, but the reason is deeply unsettling. So the tradition of stopping clocks when someone dies goes back hundreds of years. In Victorian England, it was standard practice. The moment someone passed, every clock in the house was stopped. Officially, the reason was to mark the time of death. Practically speaking, though, people believed the soul could get trapped in the mechanism, that a clock's ticking could confuse a departing spirit, keep it stuck, looping, like a ghost caught in the rhythm of something that no longer applies to them. And clockmakers throughout history have been some of the most superstitious on Earth. There's an old belief that a clock that stops on its own is predicting a death. If a clock that's been ticking for years just stops for no mechanical reason, someone in the household is going to die. Documented accounts of this going back centuries, enough that it became a genuine fear. Families would maintain clocks obsessively, not because they cared about time, but because they were terrified of the silence. Oh, and the famous clock at the Palace of Westminster, Big Ben, was deliberately built with a flaw. The original clockmaker, Henry John Dent, included a mechanism he called Mercy Gate, a tiny intentional imperfection that caused the clock to lose exactly 1 second every 113 days. He believed a perfect clock was a fucking abomination, that human beings were never meant to measure time with total precision, that perfect timekeeping would unravel something fundamental. He reportedly told colleagues, a clock that never errs will drive its keeper mad, so we built in an error on purpose, and it's still there. Your body has its own clock, circadian rhythm, roughly 24 hours, except it's not 24 hours. Left completely alone with no sunlight and no external time cues, the human body drifts to a cycle of about 24 hours and 11 minutes. Your internal clock does not match real time. It's slightly off, consistently, across all humans, as if the body was calibrated for a day that's slightly longer than Earth's, which is a bit odd because Mars has a day that's 24 hours and 37 minutes, closer to our internal rhythm than Earth's actual day. Why would your body's default match Mars better than the planet you evolved on? And people who are isolated from all time cues or for extended periods report something terrifying. Time stops feeling linear. Past and future start blurring. Some people lose days without noticing. Others feel like minutes last hours. Remove the clocks and human perception of time basically falls apart. As if our existence of time isn't built in, it's imposed by the clocks, by the structure. Take the structure away and whatever time actually is starts showing through. We built clocks to measure time, but maybe what we actually did was build a cage around something we don't understand, and the tradition of stopping them when someone dies isn't about marking the moment.
I've never heard that about clocks before. Very interesting superstition.
In Australia, there is something more terrifying than snakes and spiders. Now, in Queensland, there was this story from this older gentleman who lived alone in the bush. Now, every night he would sit on his porch, and on his house, he had this bright spotlight. And so one night he was sitting out on the porch and he was just enjoying the weather when all of a sudden that spotlight on the side of the house goes out. So he thinks, okay, the bulb must have burned out. I'll go inside and replace it. So after he goes inside and he grabs a bulb and he goes around, he gets his ladder and he goes up there to change out the bulb. But when he gets up there, he notices something has taken the bulb out. And so he's like, you know, what could have happened to the light bulb? Like, did someone steal it? And right at that moment, he starts hearing this sound of two rocks clinking together. They got a little louder, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees this tall, shadowy figure run by. So he gets down off the ladder and he runs inside, locks the door, and he immediately phones the police. Now, he lives so far out in the bush that the police cannot get there until the morning. So as he's waiting for the police to come, he keeps looking out the window. And from time to time, he would see this tall, shadowy figure sort of run by. And he would think that he saw these bright, glowing eyes that almost look like two flames. And so eventually the morning comes and the police arrive. And when he goes to the door and answers it, he said it was this Aboriginal fella. And the officer begins talking to him, and he explains to him, something stole the light out of my spotlight, and I began seeing these shadowy figures, and I could hear the sound of two rocks clinking together. And this officer just gives him this very serious look. And he says, you know, that's weird, because my people, we have this story of something we call a Malinga. And he said, well, what's that? He said, well, you know, he's this tall fella that has very hard skin, almost like a rock. and he walks sort of very awkward, and it said his knees slapped together, and he doesn't like any sort of light. And most of the time he'll, avoid you, but if you make him angry, it could be very bad. But he said, that's just a legend. We make up to scare the young kids. And so after the officer left, he just couldn't help but think like, did I make this thing mad by having that spotlight up? So that night, it started to get dark, and he went back out on his porch. And as he sat there, looking out off into the distance, he began to hear the sound of rocks clinking together. Clink, 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 clink. And he began to see this very tall, shadowy figure standing there with these bright, glowing eyes that look like fire. And so he instantly turned around, ran inside his house, and locked the door. But this thing didn't go away. It came up to the door, and it started shaking the handle. So as he's sitting there by the door, hoping this thing doesn't come inside, it moves over to the window, and it breaks out the window, and it tries to come inside his house. So he goes out the back door, and he runs around to his Jeep, and he jumps in, and he turns on the lights, and he starts up the vehicle. And instantly, when the lights hit this thing, it took off running back into the bush, and he managed to drive out of there. So what do you think? Is the Malinga real?
I've never heard of a Malinga before, but coming from Australia, honestly, a rock creature does not sound nearly as terrifying as some of the creatures that are there. It actually sounds like the Thing from Fantastic Four. Let me know if you've heard of this creature.
They put it right in your face. This statue in New York, a reptile pulling a child underground. I really wish I could elaborate on this without getting in trouble, but I mean, I'm sure some of you, I hope, can connect the dots of what I'm saying here. They have a statue in New York of a reptile, an alligator, pulling what looks like a child underground into a sewer. Why? Why? What is the reason?
Wow, it does really seem like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. That really does look like Mark Zuckerberg trying to eat a child. The detail is insane.
I'm going to show you how to cure your depression in 3 easy steps. Step 1, I need you to go outside and touch grass. Step 2, turn some Creed on. And then, kick your shoes off and touch some grass. And step 3, enjoy the moment. That's it. Like I say, I'm just here and I'm enjoying the moment, listening to the sound of nature and the birds, because that's what we need nowadays. So if you're stuck in the matrix and you want to get out of it, follow these 3 simple steps and you'll see that it'll change. And here's the real question. Who listens to Creed? I still do. I love Creed. But you're grown, you can do what you want. Well, thank you everybody for stopping by. Surely do appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, Jesus loves you. Go outside and touch grass. Y'all have a wonderful day.
You know what? I've been listening to Creed a lot lately, so this is right up my alley. Unfortunately, I'm perpetually always stuck in the Matrix, but that doesn't mean that I can't step outside, touch some grass, listen to some nature, and some Creed, and cure my depression. So you know what? I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think it's time to go touch some grass. Alright guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end today's video. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching these clips with me. Again, there should be a 3rd upload today, so if that's something that you're looking forward to, thanks for stopping by. And with that, if today's your birthday, happy birthday, and if not, have a good day anyways.